The Indus Valley, present-day Pakistan, an archaeologist brushes away centuries of dust and freezes. Beneath his hands lies something impossible, a city. But not just any city, a metropolis with running water, underground sewage systems, grid-patterned streets, multi-story buildings, built 4,500 years ago, more advanced than ancient Rome, more organized than medieval London, more sophisticated than anything that would exist for another 2,000 years. And then it vanished. No invasion, no warfare, no gradual decline. The people of Mohenjo-Daro simply disappeared. This is the story of one of history's greatest mysteries, a civilization that thrived for 1,000 years and vanished overnight. What happened to Mohenjo-Daro? For thousands of years it lay buried, forgotten. A massive mound in the Sindh province of Pakistan, locals called it Mohenjo-Daro, the Mound of the Dead. They had no idea what was beneath. In 1922, Indian archaeologist R.D. Banerjee was surveying the area when he noticed something unusual. Baked bricks, ancient seals, artifacts that didn't match anything from known civilizations. He began to dig. What he found shocked the world, an entire city, perfectly preserved beneath layers of silt and sand. Streets laid out in a precise grid pattern, buildings constructed with standardized bricks, public baths, granaries, marketplaces. This wasn't a primitive settlement. This was urban planning at a level that wouldn't be seen again until the Roman Empire, 2,000 years later. But here's what made it truly extraordinary. Mohenjo-Daro wasn't alone. As excavations continued, archaeologists discovered it was part of something much larger, the Indus Valley civilization. A network of cities and towns spread across 1.5 million square kilometers, from modern-day Pakistan to India, from the Arabian Sea to the Himalayas. Over 5 million people lived in this civilization. At its peak around 2500 BCE, it was the largest civilization on Earth, bigger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. And Mohenjo-Daro was its crown jewel. The city housed around 40,000 people. Its streets were wide and straight. Every home had access to fresh water through an elaborate system of wells and channels. Wastewater flowed into covered drains beneath the streets, a sewage system so advanced that many modern cities would be envious. The Great Bath, a massive public pool, sat at the heart of the city, 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, waterproofed with layers of bitumen, fed by an intricate water management system. The people who lived here were sophisticated. They traded with Mesopotamia, over 2,000 kilometers away. They had standardized weights and measures. They created intricate jewelry. They carved seals with a script that, to this day, we still cannot read. No pyramids, no ziggurats, no massive temples or palaces. Instead, Mohenjo-Daro showed something different: equality. The houses were relatively uniform in size. There were no grand royal complexes, no obvious signs of kings or emperors. This was a civilization built on order, planning, and cooperation. A society so advanced, so stable that it thrived for 1,000 years, and then it ended. Around 1900 BCE, something changed. Archaeologists noticed something disturbing in the later layers of Mohenjo-Daro. The quality of construction declined. Buildings were shoddily repaired. Streets became cluttered with debris. The famous sewage system, once the pride of the city, began to fail. Wells were abandoned. The Great Bath fell into disrepair. But why? The first clue came from the skeletons. In the 1920s and 30s, excavators found groups of bodies scattered throughout the city, not buried, not cremated, simply left where they fell. One group was found in a street, another in a residential area, a third near the steps leading to a well. 43 skeletons in total, men, women, children, some still wearing jewelry, some with arms raised as if protecting themselves. British archaeologist Sir Mortimer Wheeler examined the bones and noticed something chilling: evidence of violent death, sword cuts, crushing blows. Wheeler proposed a dramatic theory: Mohenjo-Daro was invaded, conquered, its people slaughtered in the streets by invading Aryans sweeping down from Central Asia. It was a compelling story, and for decades it was accepted as fact, but there was a problem. When modern archaeologists re-examined the evidence, they found something different. The skeletons weren't from the same time period. Some were centuries apart, and many showed no signs of violence at all, just poor burial practices. There were no weapons, no armor, no fortifications, no signs of a battle. The invasion theory collapsed, so if it wasn't warfare, what happened? Over the decades, researchers have proposed dozens of theories, each one attempting to solve the puzzle of Mohenjo-Daro's disappearance. Theory 1: climate change and drought. Around 2000 BCE, the climate of the region began to shift. The monsoons, critical for agriculture, became weaker and less reliable. Studies of ancient river patterns show that many tributaries of the Indus River began to dry up. The Saraswati River, mentioned in ancient texts, may have disappeared entirely. Without water, crops failed. Without crops, famine spread. Without food, the great cities emptied. The people didn't die, they simply left, migrating east and south, searching for more fertile lands. This theory is compelling, but there's a problem. It doesn't explain the sudden nature of the abandonment. Climate change happens gradually. Cities decline over generations, not overnight. Theory 2: catastrophic flooding. The Indus River was both Mohenjo-Daro's lifeline and its greatest threat. Geological evidence shows that around 1900 BCE, massive tectonic activity occurred in the region. An earthquake, possibly magnitude 7 or higher, may have altered the course of the river. Some researchers believe the earthquake created a natural dam downstream, causing the Indus to flood catastrophically. Mohenjo-Daro would have been inundated, destroyed, buried under meters of silt. This would explain why the city shows multiple layers of rebuilding. The people kept returning, trying to rebuild, only to be flooded again and again. Eventually, they gave up. But again, there's a gap in the evidence. While flooding definitely occurred, was it enough to destroy an entire civilization? Theory 3: epidemic disease. What if Mohenjo-Daro was hit by a plague? The sophisticated sewage system that once protected the city may have become its downfall. When maintenance stopped, when the system broke down, disease would have spread rapidly through contaminated water: cholera, typhoid, dysentery. In densely populated urban centers, epidemics can be devastating. And if the disease was severe enough, people would have fled, abandoning the cities to escape infection. This theory explains the speed of the collapse, but it's hard to prove. Diseases rarely leave traces in ancient bones, and no mass graves have been found. Theory 4: river migration. Perhaps the most accepted theory today is this: the Indus River simply moved. Rivers in this region are dynamic. They shift course over time due to sediment buildup, earthquakes, and flooding. Evidence suggests that around 1900 BCE, the Indus River began to migrate away from Mohenjo-Daro. The city that once sat on the riverbank found itself kilometers from its water source. Without the river, trade stopped, agriculture collapsed. The city became unsustainable. The people had no choice but to leave. This theory is supported by geological surveys showing ancient river channels that no longer flow near the city ruins. But here's the haunting part. Even this doesn't fully explain the mystery. Because when archaeologists examined the final layers of occupation, they found something strange. Valuables left behind, jewelry in houses, tools in workshops, personal belongings abandoned in place. If people had time to plan an orderly evacuation, why didn't they take their possessions? It's as if they left in a hurry, or as if they intended to return, but never did. And then there's the most controversial theory of all. In the 1990s, British researcher David Davenport proposed something shocking. Mohenjo-Daro was destroyed by a nuclear explosion. I know how that sounds, but hear the evidence. When archaeologists excavated certain areas of the city, they found something bizarre. Pottery and bricks that had been melted, fused together at temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius. That's far hotter than any normal fire. Davenport pointed to ancient Sanskrit texts, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, that describe weapons of unimaginable power. A single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, weapons that created a pillar of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns, descriptions that sound eerily like nuclear explosions. He claimed to have found skeletons with radiation levels 50 times higher than normal, bodies lying in the streets as if struck down instantly. The theory captured imaginations worldwide. Could an ancient civilization have possessed nuclear technology? But here's the reality. The theory doesn't hold up. Modern archaeologists have thoroughly debunked it. The melted bricks? They're simply baked pottery hardened by normal kiln fires. The high radiation? Either a misreading or natural background radiation. There's no evidence of radioactive fallout, no blast patterns, no characteristic effects of nuclear detonation. The nuclear theory is fiction, fascinating fiction, but fiction nonetheless. And yet it reveals something important, how desperately we want to understand what happened, how unsettling it is that a great civilization can simply vanish. So what really happened to Mohenjo-Daro? The truth is likely less dramatic than invasion or nuclear war, but no less tragic. Modern research suggests it was a perfect storm of disasters. Not one catastrophic event, but multiple crises converging over decades. First, the climate changed. The monsoons weakened, droughts became more frequent. Second, the rivers shifted. The Indus and its tributaries began to change course, driven by tectonic activity and sediment buildup. Third, trade networks collapsed. Mohenjo-Daro's wealth came from trade, with Mesopotamia, with other Indus cities. When those routes broke down, the economy suffered. Fourth, the infrastructure failed. Without resources and manpower, the sophisticated water systems fell into disrepair. Disease spread. And finally, the people made a choice. They looked at their dying city and decided, it's time to leave. This wasn't a sudden apocalypse, it was a slow, grinding decline. A civilization that realized it could no longer sustain its urban centers. The people of Mohenjo-Daro didn't disappear, they dispersed, moving to smaller settlements, returning to rural agricultural lifestyles, merging with other populations. The great cities were abandoned, but the people survived. Their descendants are still here, in Pakistan and India, across South Asia. The Indus Valley civilization didn't end, it transformed. But here's what makes the story haunting. When the cities were abandoned, so was the writing, the sophisticated urban culture, the technology. For the next 1,000 years, the region would have no cities of comparable size, no urban planning, no written records. It was as if civilization took a step backward. And the knowledge of what Mohenjo-Daro once was vanished into legend. Today, Mohenjo-Daro is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists walk the ancient streets. They marvel at the Great Bath. They try to imagine life 4,500 years ago. But the city faces new threats: rising water tables, salt damage, erosion, climate change. The same force that may have destroyed the original city now threatens the ruins. Archaeologists race against time to preserve what remains, to document the evidence before it crumbles to dust. And yet, despite decades of research, mysteries remain. We still cannot read the Indus script. Thousands of seals have been found, carved with symbols and text, but the language remains undeciphered. We don't know what they said, what they recorded, what stories they told. We don't know how their government worked, who led them, how decisions were made. We don't know their religion, their beliefs, their gods, if they had any. Mohenjo-Daro speaks to us across 4 millennia, but we can't understand its language, and perhaps that's the real tragedy. Not that the civilization ended. Civilizations rise and fall. That's the nature of history. The tragedy is the silence. That such an advanced, sophisticated culture could exist for 1,000 years and leave us with more questions than answers. Mohenjo-Daro stands as a reminder that even the greatest civilizations are fragile, that climate, geography, and resources matter, that sustainability isn't optional, it's survival. The people of Mohenjo-Daro built something extraordinary, a society based on planning, cooperation, and innovation. But when the environment changed, when the water stopped flowing, when the systems broke down, it all came apart. They didn't disappear overnight, not really, but their world did. And in the end, all that remains are the ruins, silent, mysterious, asking questions we may never answer. This was Mohenjo-Daro, the civilization that vanished and the warning it left behind.